The annual report is a requirement of the REC contract. Each year in July, each approved vendor with an active REC contract is required to submit a report of the contracts and systems in its portfolio. The annual report period is in July, right around the end of one program year and the beginning of the next program year. The purpose of the annual report is to serve as the basis for verifying that RECs from projects are being delivered to the applicable contracting utility. The annual report occurs in July of each year after the close of the prior delivery year, which runs from June 1st through May 31st. Once the annual report process is complete, the resulting REC delivery data is used for a separate process called the REC performance evaluation. The REC performance evaluation occurs at the portfolio or contract level, but a system only becomes eligible for this evaluation once it has been energized and it has been 3 full delivery years since the start of the delivery term. More on that later. Once the REC performance evaluation is complete, the program administrator shares the results with the IPA and utility for further action, including acting on any required collateral drawdowns. We'll dive into each of these steps of this process in the coming slides. We're going to dig into the annual report next. To reiterate, on an annual basis, each approved vendor with an active REC contract is required to submit an annual report that covers the contracts and systems in its portfolio, which serves as the basis for verifying that RECs are being delivered as required. The report includes confirmation of RECs delivered by each system in the portfolio, the status of all systems that have been approved but not yet energized systems that have not been delivered RECs in the delivery year, the balance of collateral held by each utility, a summary of requests for REC obligation suspension, reduction, or elimination due to force majeure events or other circumstances, information on consumer complaints received, and confirmation of prevailing wage requirements. For community solar projects, it also includes the percentage of each system subscribed on a capacity basis, daily average subscription rates, the number and type of subscribers, including the capacity allocated to each type, subscriber turnover rates, and confirmation of community-driven community solar or traditional community solar scoring commitments as applicable. One of the most critical pieces of data that is confirmed in this process is the quantity of RECs delivered by each system. When we say RECs delivered, we mean successfully transferred to the contracting utility through GATS or MRETs. RECs are counted for a certain delivery year based on the transfer completion date, not the date that the REC was generated. As an example, if a REC has a transfer completion date between June 1st, 2025 and May 31st, 2026, it would count for the 25 to 26 delivery year. It is important for AVs to ensure that all RECs for a given year are transferred to the utility by May 31st, or they will count toward the next delivery year. You'll notice that some of these items have an asterisk next to them. These items will be provided in a report format by the program administrator to the approved vendor to review and confirm the accuracy of. For those items, Energy Solutions will generate a report, share it with the approved vendor, and the approved vendor will review and then submit confirmation of report accuracy, as well as respond to any remaining annual report items. Approved vendors with an active REC contract will be invited to review reports and submit their annual report response on July 1st of each year. Submission of the REC annual report is a requirement of the REC contract, and therefore, if an approved vendor does not have an active REC contract, they are not required to submit an annual report. An active REC contract is a master REC contract that had ICC-approved projects under it as of the end of the delivery year, which is May 31st, preceding the annual report that occurs in July. If an approved vendor does have an active REC contract, non-submission of the annual report is an event of default, which may result in the removal of all projects from the contract, the return of any incentive payments received, forfeiture of collateral, and may also result in disciplinary action against the approved vendor. The information in the red box gives a brief overview of the annual report process. Approved vendors will receive an email on July 1st inviting them to respond to the annual report. The email will include a link to the approved vendor guide, which is a step-by-step process on how to access all the needed information for the report and to complete the process. It also includes a preview of all the specific questions that the annual report covers. There will be a link to the approved vendor's SharePoint folder. SharePoint will house any of the program administrator generated reports that are required for this process. So for example, you'll see a REX delivered report in SharePoint, and you will be expected to review that report and respond to its accuracy. There will also be a link to the annual report response form. That's an online form that you will use to indicate if the reports in SharePoint are accurate and provide any additional annual report responses. The annual report response period goes from July 1st to August 1st. After the end of the submission window, the program administrator will review the responses and reach out to approved vendors if any additional information is needed. Let's review an overall timeline of this process. Please note that these dates are all outlined in the REC contract, and therefore the program administrator cannot offer flexibility to these dates. It is critical that approved vendors are responsive during this process and submit the annual report on time. So again, on July 1st, the annual report response period begins. Approved vendors with an active REC contract will receive a link to the annual report and will be invited to review reports on SharePoint and submit annual report responses. On August 1st, the annual report response period ends. This is the deadline to submit annual report responses. Not filing an annual report by the deadline is an event of default and may jeopardize an approved vendor's standing in the program. August 2nd, after the submission window closes, the review and cure period begins. The program administrator will contact approved vendors to cure any reported discrepancies. October 18th is the last day for the program administrator to inform approved vendors of any discrepancies. On October 30th, annual reports are finalized. No modifications to submissions will be permitted after this date. This finalizes the REC delivery data to be used in subsequent REC performance evaluations, which will determine if collateral adjustments or drawdowns are needed. And finally, on December 2nd, the program administrator will have all collateral adjustment calculations complete. Once these are complete, the contracting utilities will inform approved vendors of any required drawdowns. Also note that if a particular deadline falls on a non-business day, the deadline will be shifted to the next business day. All right, so we've discussed the annual report, which is the process to confirm REC delivery quantities, among other information. Once the REC delivery quantities are finalized and agreed to by all parties, the next step is to perform the REC performance evaluation. Note that this is only a requirement of the 15-year contracts. The 20-year contracts do not undergo this process because they are paid for RECs up front, they are paid for RECs as they get delivered over the full delivery term. The REC performance evaluation will begin for each system in the portfolio after it has been energized and 3 full delivery years have passed since the start of the delivery term. The delivery term starts the first day of the month after the date of first REC delivery. A delivery year runs from June 1st to May 31st. So for example, if a system was energized or Part 2 verified in August of 2025, and then it delivered its first REC to the utility in September of 2025, the delivery term would start October 1st, 2025, and its first delivery year would end May 31st, 2025. However, since that delivery term started after June of that delivery year, its first delivery year would not be a complete delivery year. The first 3 full delivery years would be June of 2026 through May 2027, then June 2027 through May 2028, and finally June 2028 through May 2029. It would undergo the first REC performance evaluation in the fall of 2029 to be completed by December 2029. For this evaluation, the program administrator compares a 3-year average of actual REC deliveries for each designated system under the contract to an expected REC delivery quantity for the most recent delivery year, which is outlined in the Schedule B. So rather than compare year to year for actual versus expected, the evaluation compares a 3-year average of actual deliveries to one expected delivery year quantity. The reason the evaluation does this is so that the evaluation isn't compromised if a system underperformed for a period of time, was down for a month or two, or if there was a particularly snowy winter, for example. It would balance out an average of 3 years being used. The result of the REC performance evaluation is that each system will result in either a surplus, shortfall, or an exact delivery. A REC surplus occurs when the average actual delivery value for RECs exceeds the expected REC value. A REC shortfall occurs when the average actual delivery value for RECs is lower than the expected REC value. Surplus RECs get applied to make up for the shortfall of other systems in the portfolio, or if there are none, they get carried forward until the end of the 15-year delivery term. After surplus RECs are applied across any systems with shortfalls, any remaining shortfalls result in a sum of money owed to the utility in the form of collateral drawdowns. The program administrator completes this evaluation and shares the results with the contracting utility for further action, including acting on any required collateral drawdowns. All right, next let's talk about that drawdown process, which is basically the process for the approved vendor to pay back the utility for the under delivery of RECs that the approved vendor was already paid for upfront via the REC invoicing process. If the drawdown amount is less than $5,000, no drawdown occurs. The contracting utility will track the drawdown amount and it will be added to the next drawdown amount for the next year. If the drawdown is $5,000 or more, the contracting utility will notify the approved vendor of the drawdown amount. The contracting utility will then draw upon the total collateral balance in the amount of the drawdown. Within 90 days of any collateral draw, the approved vendor will be required to post additional collateral to top up its total collateral to equal 5% of the total remaining contract value. We also have created additional detailed walkthrough videos of this process, including a look at the calculations, which are available on the program website under Program Help Guides.